I sat at my parents' dining table, my tremor medication wearing off 2 hours early like it had been doing for weeks. My right hand shook as I tried to cut my steak, the knife clattering against the plate. Across from me, my sister Jennifer rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't fall out of her head. "Oh, here we go," she muttered. "The dramatic tremors again." I was 27 years old with early-onset Parkinson's disease. Diagnosed 18 months ago after my symptoms were dismissed as anxiety and attention-seeking for over a year. The tremors, the rigidity, the bradykinesia. All real, all documented, all progressively getting worse despite medication adjustments. But my family had decided I was faking. "Jennifer, please," Mom said half-heartedly, not looking up from her wine glass. "What?" "We're all thinking it." Jennifer gestured at me with her fork. "She's 27. Parkinson's is an old person's disease. She probably Googled symptoms and convinced some quack doctor to diagnose her." My father, Dr. Richard Morrison, chief of surgery at St. Catherine's Hospital, set down his glass with deliberate force. He was a commanding presence, 6'3", silver-haired, the kind of surgeon who expected immediate obedience in the OR and at home. "Your sister has always been dramatic," he said. "Remember high school? She convinced herself she had mono for 3 months. It was just laziness." "I actually had mono," I said quietly, my voice already shaking with the emotion I was trying to suppress. "The test results proved it. After you demanded testing 5 times, Dad countered. You manifested symptoms through sheer willpower and stress. Just like you're doing now." I focused on my plate, on keeping my breathing steady. This was a well-worn argument. My neurologist, Dr. Helen Zhao, had confirmed my diagnosis with multiple tests. DIT scan showing reduced dopamine uptake, genetic testing revealing a LRRK2 mutation, clinical examination showing classic Parkinsonian symptoms. But none of that mattered to my family. "She's on all these medications," Mom added, finally joining the conversation. "Anti-anxiety pills, she says. But I think she's just becoming dependent. Maybe even addicted." "They're not anti-anxiety pills," I said, my frustration rising. "They're levodopa, carbidopa, and MAOB inhibitor. They help my brain produce dopamine." "Sure they do," Jennifer said with a smirk. She was a nurse practitioner, Dad's golden child who'd followed him into medicine. "I've worked in neurology rotations. You don't have Parkinson's. You're too young, too functional. Real Parkinson's patients can barely move." "That's not," I started, but Dad cut me off. "Enough, Claire. We've entertained this fantasy long enough. Stop pretending you're sick." His voice rose to a shout that made Mom flinch and Jennifer smile in vindication. "You've wasted thousands of dollars on doctors, medications, and treatments for a condition you don't have. You're 27 years old. You should be building a career, not building an identity around fake illness." My hand tremors intensified with the stress, my water glass slipping from my grip and shattering on the hardwood floor. "Perfect," Jennifer said. "And there's the dramatic finale." I stood up, my legs stiff, my movements slow. Textbook bradykinesia that any first-year medical student should recognize. "I'm going to clean that up." "Sit down," Dad commanded. "Maria will get it." He snapped his fingers toward the kitchen where our housekeeper was preparing dessert. "I can clean up my own mess," I said. "Like you clean up your own life?" Dad's voice dripped with sarcasm. "You dropped out of law school because of this illness. You moved back home because you can't work. You've become a professional patient, Claire. And we're not going to enable it anymore." "What does that mean?" I asked, though I knew I wouldn't like the answer. "It means no more money for your quack neurologist. No more medications we're paying for. No more coddling." He leaned back in his chair like a judge delivering a sentence. "If you want to keep pretending, you can do it somewhere else. We're cutting you off." The room spun slightly. I'd been living at home for 6 months since my symptoms made it impossible to manage my own apartment. I had minimal savings. My medications cost nearly $2,000 a month. My neurologist appointments were every 6 weeks. "You're serious," I whispered. "Deadly serious. This charade ends tonight." What none of them knew, what I hadn't mentioned because I wanted it to be a surprise, was that I'd invited someone to dinner. Someone who was running late due to surgery but had promised to come. The doorbell rang. "That's probably the Hendersons," Mom said, brightening. I invited them for after-dinner drinks. Richard, can you? But I was already moving toward the door, my gait shuffling, my steps small and careful. I opened it to find Dr. Helen Zhao standing on the porch, still in her business attire, carrying a leather portfolio. "Claire," she said warmly, then noticed my tear-stained face. "What's wrong?" "My family is cutting me off. They don't believe I'm sick. They think I'm pretending." The words tumbled out in a rush. Dr. Zhao's expression hardened. "Are they home?" "In the dining room." "Good. I'd like to speak with them." I led her into the dining room where my family was frozen in tableau. Dad mid-sip of wine, Jennifer with her phone out, Mom looking confused. "Hello," Dr. Zhao said, her voice professional but cold. "I'm Dr. Helen Zhao, Chief of Neurology at St. Catherine's Hospital. I'm also Claire's treating physician and, as of 3 months ago, the president of the State Medical Board." Dad's face went white. He set down his glass carefully. "Dr. Zhao, this is unexpected." "I'm sure it is." She set her portfolio on the table, unopened. "Claire invited me to dinner to discuss her treatment progress. She wanted to share some good news with her family. We've found a medication combination that's significantly improving her symptoms. But I arrived to hear you, Dr. Morrison, shouting that your daughter should stop pretending to be sick." This is a family matter," Dad said, his commanding tone faltering. "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, this is a medical matter involving a physician, you, who is dismissing a confirmed neurological diagnosis in his own daughter." Dr. Zhao's eyes were steel. "Ms. Morrison here," she gestured to Jennifer, "is a nurse practitioner who just told a Parkinson's patient that she's too functional to have the disease. And Mrs. Morrison accused her daughter of medication addiction when she's taking prescribed dopaminergic therapy." The room was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock. "Claire has young-onset Parkinson's disease caused by a LRRK2 genetic mutation," Dr. Zhao continued, her voice cutting. "Her diagnosis has been confirmed by multiple specialists, imaging studies and genetic testing. She has a progressive neurodegenerative disorder that will worsen over time despite treatment. And her family, including 2 medical professionals, has decided she's pretending." "We didn't have all the information," Mom tried weakly. "You had plenty of information. You chose to ignore it." Dr. Zhao opened her portfolio and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "This is Claire's complete medical file. Did scan results showing clear dopamine depletion in the substantia nigra. Genetic testing confirming LRRK2 mutation. Clinical notes documenting progressive symptoms over 18 months. Video recordings of her movement disorders. Would you like to review them? Or would you prefer to continue believing your daughter is an accomplished actress who's fooled multiple board-certified neurologists?" Jennifer had gone pale. Dad was staring at the documents like they might bite him. "Dr. Morrison," Dr. Zhao said, her attention laser-focused on my father. "You're chief of surgery at St. Catherine's. You understand the principle of do no harm, yes?" "Of course," he said stiffly. "Then explain to me how dismissing your daughter's diagnosed medical condition, cutting off her access to necessary medications, and threatening to make her homeless qualifies as doing no harm." She paused. "Actually, don't explain it to me. Explain it to the Medical Board Ethics Committee. Because I'm filing a complaint tomorrow morning regarding your treatment of a patient under your care." "She's not my patient," Dad said quickly. "She's my daughter. Who lives in your home. Who is financially dependent on you. Who you have direct power over." Dr. Zhao's voice was sharp. "That makes this even worse, Dr. Morrison. You're not just dismissing a patient, you're medically neglecting a dependent family member. That falls under mandatory reporting requirements. You're threatening me?" Dad's voice rose again, his face reddening. "I'm informing you of consequences. There's a difference." Dr. Zhao turned to Jennifer. "Ms. Morrison, you're a nurse practitioner at St. Catherine's, correct?" Jennifer nodded, unable to speak. "I'll be recommending a formal review of your clinical competency, particularly regarding neurological conditions. If you can't recognize clear Parkinsonian symptoms in your own sister, symptoms I've documented extensively, I question your ability to recognize them in patients." "That's not fair," Jennifer whispered. "What's not fair is telling your sister she's faking a degenerative disease. What's not fair is mocking her tremors at a family dinner. What's not fair is being a healthcare provider who dismisses patient symptoms because they don't fit your narrow understanding of disease presentation. Dr. Zhao's expression was granite. Parkinson's disease affects approximately 10% of patients under age 50. Young-onset cases present differently than late-onset cases. This is basic neurology, Ms. Morrison. The fact that you don't know this is concerning. Dr. Zhao spent the next 20 minutes methodically dismantling every argument my family had made against my diagnosis. She showed them my imaging studies on her tablet. Clear evidence of dopamine depletion. She played video recordings from my first appointments showing my tremors, my rigidity, my difficulty with fine motor tasks. She pulled up genetic testing that confirmed my LRRK2 mutation, explaining that it carried a 40% lifetime risk of Parkinson's disease. Claire didn't choose this, Dr. Zhao said. She didn't manifest it through stress. She didn't fake symptoms to get attention. She has a genetic mutation that destroyed dopamine-producing neurons in her brain. This is not psychological. This is not fake. This is neuroscience. Mom was crying quietly. Jennifer stared at the table. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 20 minutes. The medication you wanted to cut off? Dr. Zhao continued. Without it, Claire's symptoms will accelerate. She'll develop dyskinesia, dystonia, possibly dementia. Her quality of life will deteriorate rapidly. And you were going to withdraw it because you decided, despite having no neurological expertise, that she was pretending. We made a mistake, Dad said finally, his voice hollow. Yes. You did. And your mistake could have killed your daughter. Dr. Zhao closed her portfolio. Here's what's going to happen. Claire will continue her treatment without interference. Her medications will be paid for without question or complaint. She will live here rent-free until she's stable enough to work again. And all three of you will attend family therapy with a counselor who specializes in chronic illness. And if we refuse? Jennifer asked, her voice small. Then I proceed with ethics complaints against both medical professionals in this room. Your hospital privileges will be suspended pending investigation. Your names will be in the medical community as providers who medically neglected a family member with a confirmed diagnosis. Your reputations will be destroyed. Dr. Zhao's voice was matter-of-fact. Your choice. There was no choice. They all knew it. We'll do it, Dad said quietly. All of it. Good. Dr. Zhao turned to me. Claire, do you want to stay here tonight? I can arrange alternative housing if you'd prefer. I looked at my family. Mom crying, Jennifer pale and shaking, Dad looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen him. Part of me wanted to leave, to walk out and never look back. But another part of me wanted to see this through. Wanted them to face what they'd done. I'll stay, I said. For now. Dr. Zhao squeezed my shoulder. Call me if anything changes. Anything at all. He gave my family one last withering look. I'll be monitoring this situation closely. If Claire reports any further dismissal, any mockery, any suggestion that her illness isn't real, I will proceed with ethics complaints immediately. Am I clear? 3 heads nodded in unison. After Dr. Zhao left, the dining room remained silent for a long moment. Then Dad spoke, his voice cracking. Claire, I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, I said quietly. You're a surgeon. You understand medicine. But you chose to believe I was lying rather than accept that I was sick. That's not ignorance. That's cruelty. I know, he whispered. You were going to cut me off. Make me homeless. Let me lose access to medications that keep me functional. My voice was steady despite the tremor in my hands. You were going to let me deteriorate because my illness was inconvenient for you. Jennifer spoke up, tears streaming down her face. I'm a nurse. I should have known. I should have listened. Yes. You should have. I stood up, my movements still slow and stiff. I'm going to my room. Don't follow me. Don't knock on my door. I'll talk to you when I'm ready. 3 weeks later, I sat in Dr. Zhao's office for my regular appointment. My medication adjustments were working well. The tremors had decreased, my mobility had improved, and I was sleeping better. How are things at home? She asked. Different. Quiet. They're walking on eggshells around me. I paused. Dad's ethics review is next week. He might lose his position as chief of surgery. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Part of me thinks he deserves it. Part of me feels guilty. You shouldn't feel guilty for the consequences of his actions, Dr. Zhao said gently. He's a physician who medically neglected a family member. The medical board has to investigate. Jennifer's review is in 2 weeks. She might lose her hospital privileges entirely. Again, consequences for her actions. She demonstrated a fundamental lack of clinical competency. I nodded. Mom started therapy. Individual sessions, not just family therapy. She says she wants to understand why she believed them instead of me. That's good. That's progress. Is it enough? I asked. Can a family come back from this? Dr. Zhao was quiet for a moment. That's not a medical question, Claire. That's a personal one. Some relationships can heal. Some can't. Only you can decide what you're willing to accept. Over the next 6 months, my family tried. Dad was removed as chief of surgery but kept his surgical privileges after completing an ethics remediation program. Jennifer was suspended for 3 months and required to complete additional neurology training. Mom threw herself into chronic illness advocacy, volunteering at support groups. They attended every family therapy session. They learned about Parkinson's disease. They apologized again and again until the words started to feel genuine. But something had broken that couldn't be fully repaired. The trust, the foundation of family, it was cracked, and no amount of apologies could completely smooth the fractures. I eventually moved out into an accessible apartment closer to the hospital. I started working part-time as a patient advocate, using my experience to help others navigate dismissive medical systems. My family still called, still tried to be part of my life. Sometimes I answered. Sometimes I didn't. Because the truth was, Dr. Zhao's intervention had saved more than my access to medication. It had saved my life. But it couldn't save my relationship with people who'd looked at my suffering and decided it was performance. That was something I had to grieve. The loss of the family I'd thought I had. The realization that medical degrees and healthcare training meant nothing when bias and denial were more comfortable than truth. My father lost his prestigious position. My sister's career stalled. My mother lived with the guilt of choosing comfort over her daughter's well-being. Those were their consequences to carry. Mine was learning to build a life where my illness was believed, my reality was respected, and my worth wasn't contingent on being healthy enough to deserve compassion. The medical board president had witnessed my family's cruelty and ensured there were consequences. But the real consequence, the one that mattered most, was that I learned I didn't need their belief to validate my truth. I had the diagnosis. I had the treatment. I had the specialists who listened. And I had myself, tremors, rigidity, bradykinesia and all. That was enough.